Before the world ever clapped for her, 42 doors slammed shut in her face, but she kept knocking. Each door held a promise, a job, a contract, a chance, a simple yes. But every time she reached out with hope, what came back was silence. Or rejection, no callbacks, no explanations, sometimes not even the courtesy of a reply, just a big echoing no. Some rejections were kind, some indifferent, and some were so cold they left her sitting in silence, questioning everything she believed about herself. She wasn't asking for a shortcut. She wasn't looking for sympathy. All she wanted was a chance, just one person to believe in what she saw so clearly. But the world has a strange habit. It often laughs at dreams before it applauds them. In hers, it was laughed at 42 times. She cried sometimes. You would too. Imagine giving your all, your late nights, your heart, your soul, to something, and being told over and over, you're not what we're looking for. But here's the thing, even through the tears, even when doubt sat on her shoulders like a weight that refused to lift, she kept going. Because deep inside her, louder than all the rejections, was one stubborn voice. It whispered, then shouted, then screamed, asterisk, asterisk, keep knocking. Asterisk, asterisk, she knocked when she was tired. She knocked when her friends said, maybe it's time to give up. She knocked even when she didn't believe it would open. Because she believed something else too, something that didn't come from books or mentors or motivational posters. She believed that asterisk, asterisk, rejection is not the end. Asterisk, asterisk, sometimes it's just the universe asking, asterisk, how bad do you want it? Asterisk, you see, those 42 people who told her no weren't villains. They were mirrors, reflecting a world not yet ready for her. And that's the truth nobody tells you. Sometimes when people reject you, it's not about you being wrong. It's about you being early, so she waited. She learned, she sharpened, and still, she knocked, until one day, door number 43 creaked open, slowly, quietly, barely enough for a hand to reach through, but that was all she needed, a sliver of light, a whisper of a chance, and she ran with it. What came after that wasn't magic, it was sweat, it was sleepless nights, it was doing the work of 5 people because now, finally, someone had said yes, and she wasn't about to waste it. And that woman, once told she wasn't marketable, wasn't experienced, wasn't the right fit, she ended up not just fitting into the world, asterisk, asterisk, she reshaped it. Asterisk, asterisk, but here's the beautiful twist. She didn't hold a grudge. She didn't curse those 42 doors that turned her away. No, she built her own building, asterisk, asterisk, with 42 open doors. Asterisk, asterisk, because she understood something rare. Rejection is not a dead end, it's a detour to exactly where you're meant to go. So if you're out there right now, collecting no's, like she once did, feeling the sting of rejection more than the joy of acceptance, remember her. She was turned away, overlooked, and underestimated. But she kept knocking, and that's how she changed everything. They said no, again and again, but she turned no into a new beginning. It wasn't just one rejection that hurt. It was the pattern of them. A steady rhythm of disappointment, interviews that ended with polite thank yous and no follow-up, meetings that promised potential but delivered silence, letters that said, we've decided to go in a different direction, calls that never came, hopes that rose high, only to crash back down. At first she took it personally. How could she not? Each rejection felt like a verdict. Asterisk, you're not good enough. You're not ready. You're not what we need. Asterisk. And when you hear those words often enough, they don't just sting, they start to echo inside you. They shape how you see yourself. She began to question everything. Her voice, her choices, her talent. Maybe they were right. Maybe the world didn't need what she had to offer. Maybe the dream she held so tightly was better left behind. But something in her refused to agree. Something deep. Something silent and solid. Call it faith. Call it stubbornness, call it grit. It didn't shout, it whispered. Asterisk, try again. Asterisk, so she did. Each no could have been the end, but she made each one a lesson. When the door closed, she stayed just long enough to figure out why. When people dismissed her ideas, she refined them. When the path disappeared, she carved a new one. she realized something the world often forgets. Asterisk, no doesn't mean never. It means not yet, not here, not this way. Asterisk, and slowly the pattern changed, not because the world changed, because she did. Every rejection built something in her, thicker skin, sharper thinking, better strategy. She became the kind of person who didn't just want success. She earned the tools to build it herself. Where others saw a wall, she saw a redirection. When others gave up, she leaned in. They said no to her face. So she said yes to herself behind closed doors. She used their doubt as fuel. And when people told her, asterisk, it can't be done, asterisk, she quietly replied, asterisk, watch me, asterisk, eventually, one of those doors didn't shut all the way. It paused. It opened a little, not much, but enough, and that was all she needed. She stepped through, humble but ready, battle, tested by failure, not naive anymore, but still hopeful. And what happened next? The very thing the world said couldn't be done. She did it, and the irony, the same voices that once told her no, now wanted to be part of her yes, but she never gloated. She didn't turn around and say, I told you so. That wasn't her style. Instead, she kept building, kept creating, kept opening doors for others who were hearing no, just like she once did, because she understood something powerful. Asterisk, rejection isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. Asterisk, they told her no, but they didn't realize what they had done. They lit a fire. They planted a seed. They gave her the push she didn't know she needed. She didn't become extraordinary because she was accepted. She became extraordinary because she refused to stop when she wasn't. The world told her she wasn't good enough. She listened just long enough to prove them wrong. It wasn't always easy to tune out the noise. When enough people question your worth, it starts to sound like truth. Their words weren't always cruel, but they carried weight, subtle dismissals, shrugged shoulders, glances that skipped past her in a room. The kind of doubt that isn't shouted, but whispered, quiet enough to slip under your skin, deep enough to linger. You're not ready. This isn't for someone like you. There's already someone doing that better. She heard it all. From strangers, from colleagues, even from people she trusted. They told her she didn't have the look, the experience, the right background. They said it in 100 ways, but it all meant the same thing. Asterisk, you don't belong here. Asterisk, and for a moment, she believed them. She sat with their words, let them echo in her chest. She asked herself the hard questions. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was dreaming too big, reaching too far, wanting too much. Maybe she should settle. Stay small, stay quiet, but then something shifted. She realized that the people who told her she wasn't good enough weren't the ones out there trying. They weren't chasing dreams. They weren't failing and getting back up. They weren't building anything, just tearing down others from the sidelines. So she made a decision. If she was going to fail, it would be on her own terms. If she was going to fall, she'd fall forward. Not because someone else said so, but because she dared to leap. That's when the real work began. She stopped waiting for permission. She stopped trying to be what they wanted. She stopped shrinking. And the more she stepped into who she really was, the more powerful she became. It wasn't overnight. There were setbacks, lonely moments, days when quitting seemed like mercy. But every time she hit a wall, she remembered the voices that said she wasn't good enough. And instead of breaking her, those voices built a resolve. She trained harder, learned deeper, worked longer. She knew she couldn't silence the world, but she could make sure its noise never drowned out her own voice again. Bit by bit, things began to change, not because the world suddenly saw her differently, but because she saw herself differently. She walked into rooms with a different energy, not arrogance, not defiance. Just quiet, unshakable certainty. She didn't need everyone to believe in her, just one person, and that person was herself. Eventually, the world noticed, not because she begged for approval, but because she became undeniable. The same people who once questioned her now quoted her. The same rooms that once ignored her now made space, and when someone new stepped up, unsure and afraid, she knew exactly what to say, not because she had read it in a book, but because she had lived it. You are enough, always were. You just forgot for a while. That's how she changed the story, not by fitting in, but by standing out, not by pleasing the crowd, but by believing when no one else did. They told her she wasn't good enough. She didn't fight them. She didn't shout. She just went out and proved them wrong. She didn't change the world because she was accepted. She changed the world because she refused to accept defeat. There was no grand applause in the beginning. No one handed her a map or paved the way ahead. The world didn't welcome her with open arms or tell her she was destined for greatness. In fact, it barely noticed her at all. She started at the bottom, quiet, overlooked, doubted, and maybe that would have stopped someone else. Maybe someone else would have waited to be chosen, waited for the green light, waited for someone in power to say, asterisk, you're ready, asterisk, but not her. She didn't wait for the world to say yes, because she had already decided she wouldn't take no for an answer, not because she thought she was better than anyone, not because she thought success was guaranteed, but because she knew in her bones that quitting wasn't an option. Failure, sure, that was always on the table, but defeat, true final defeat, that required surrender, and surrender was something she refused to do. So she kept going. When things got hard, she adjusted. When people dismissed her, she listened just long enough to sharpen her edge. When the odds looked impossible, she kept showing up anyway, not because she was fearless, but because she had already made peace with fear and decided to walk forward in spite of it. The world kept throwing reasons to give up. She was told she was too inexperienced, too emotional, too unconventional. Too much, too little. But every time the world gave her a reason to stop, she found one more reason to push forward. She worked while others rested. She studied when others doubted. She stayed when it would have been easier to leave. There were nights when the only thing she had left was hope, and even that ran thin sometimes, but she held on, because deep down she knew the people who change the world aren't always the ones with the loudest voices or the most applause. They're the ones who simply refuse to give up. She didn't wait for the perfect moment. She made the moment perfect by showing up anyway. She didn't follow a rulebook written by someone else. She wrote her own, one page at a time. And in doing so, she did more than succeed. She made space for others, space for voices like hers that had been told to stay quiet, space for ideas that didn't fit the mold, space for stories that had never been heard. Because she understood something most people forget. The goal isn't to be accepted. The goal is to be authentic, to live with purpose, to keep going even when it's hard, even when it's lonely, even when no one's clapping. That's how she changed the world, not with the biggest stage, not with the most followers, but with a quiet, relentless decision to keep showing up, to keep building, to keep believing, to keep going. Even when it hurt, even when no one believed, even when defeat whispered, asterisk, you've done enough, asterisk, she didn't listen, because she knew that progress rarely comes wrapped in comfort, and legacy isn't handed out, it's earned, moment by moment, choice by choice. She didn't change the world because it welcomed her. She changed the world because she kicked the door wide open and said, asterisk, I'm coming in anyway, asterisk, and the world, it had no choice but to make room.